British anti-tank batteries played a significant role in combat against German fighting vehicles during Operation Market Garden, in September 1944. There were two types of British anti-tank guns used by the British 1st Airborne Division. The light quick-firing 6-pounder gun Mark IV, L50, mounted on the Mark III airborne carriage, and the much heavier hitting, and larger 17-pounder gun. Each could fire ammunition shells that were capable of knocking out or disabling German tanks. The common types of anti-tank shells used by the British guns in combat were armor-piercing sabots, armor-piercing Capt ballistic cap. Like most airborne combat formations in World War II, the British 1st Airborne Division included both parachute and glider-borne air landing units. The division's air landing units included several batteries of artillery used for long-range shelling missions, and also for anti-tank action against German armored fighting vehicles. Although British airborne infantry carried handheld light anti-tank weapons, such as Piats, which were very useful in close-quarter street fighting, anti-tank artillery had superior range and firepower. Jeeps and tractors were used for conveying the guns during long marches and in between gun positions in battles. Artillery crews could pivot their guns and move them short distances during battle. In Operation Market Garden, the 1st British Airborne Division assigned its veteran 1st Air Landing Anti-Tank Battery, Royal Artillery, commanded by Major Bill Arnold, to play a direct role in the assault on Arnhem. The battery was composed of 6 troops, designated as A, B, C, D, P, and Z. Troops A, B, and C would take part in the spearhead assault into Arnhem, within hours of landing on the first day of the operation. A, B and C troops' mission would be to follow the division's 1st, 2nd and 3rd parachute battalions respectively. These 3 troops each had 4 ordnance 6-pounder guns. D Troop was equipped with 4 17-pounders, and operated under the command of the 1st Parachute Brigade position. P and Z troops had 4 17-pounders and 4 6-pounders respectively. The battery was flown to Holland by gliders. The sleek 6-pounder guns flew inside Horsa gliders, towed by Sterling bombers, while the large-caliber 17-pounders were each transported in big Hamilcar gliders. Gunner Reg Butwick, of the 1st Air Landing Light Regiment, recalled his glider ride that day. "We took off in horses towed by Sterlings, which was all they were fit for by now. Some corny gunners insisted on writing on the side of their gliders, which took me in mind of the vainglorious posts seen on the side of troop trains in 1940. Berlin next stop. Etc. Anyway, we took off about 1 p.m. and circled for a long time to join the air fleet. Some horses came down in the channel, but the next thing we knew we were over Holland, and observing what seemed to be continuous bomb craters in the fields. Our Horsa made a reasonable landing, but I saw a Hamilcar turn over and make tomato soup of the 2 glider pilot crew, as the contents below them squashed them. 2 of the battery's 17-pounder guns were lost en route while airborne. The division guns arrived on their landing zones in Holland, 8 miles west of Arnhem, at 1:30 p.m., Sunday, September 17th. Having organized, the 6-pounder guns were towed by jeeps, as they followed behind each of the 3 parachute battalions' columns, marching towards Arnhem on their separate routes. The gunners of B Troop advanced with Colonel Frost's 2nd Parachute Battalion on its designated line route towards Arnhem Road Bridge, marching fast. The other 2 parachute battalions and their gun troop escorts were not so lucky, as German roadblocks halted them on their own routes. Frost's motley force of roughly 750 men was immediately formed into a defensive perimeter upon arrival at the north end of the Arnhem Bridge. The 2nd Parachute Battalion deployed in the houses and streets in the gloom of dusk. So did hundreds of other soldiers from a dozen various units of the Airborne Division, including engineers and other smaller headquarters units, along with 17 glider pilots which had brought in B Troop's anti-tank guns. Inside the Arnhem perimeter, the 4 guns along with 40 gunners of B Troop, and 1 gun of C Troop which had strayed from its own force, were first posted in a builder's yard west of the city centre. From there, the troop commander deployed 2 of the guns nearby the Arnhem Municipal Works building, housing the battery headquarters, located 200 yards west of the bridge ramp, and 1 other gun was sent on the east side of the bridge amid the factory area. The 2 remaining guns covered the north end of the bridge. The rest of the British anti-tank guns, outside the perimeter, were reassembled and grouped in and around the Airborne Division's HQ area, 2 miles west of Arnhem Bridge. Some of these anti-tank guns merged with the 75mm field artillery howitzer troops, which had set up, ready to provide fire support missions upon requests from forward observers. One of whom, Major Dennis Munford, commander of 3rd Light Battery Royal Artillery, was in Frost's perimeter at Arnhem Bridge. Following the previous day's evening-night actions at the bridge perimeter, the Germans began making light attacks against the British positions early next morning. One German light tank was noticed, moving under the darkness of the wide bridge underpass spans. One of the British anti-tank guns, posted by the battery headquarters building, fired at the prowling tank, but with no effect other than wounding 2 of its own crewmen, when the gun suddenly recoiled back 50 yards after firing, due to the negligent and fixed placement of the gun's rear spade ends on the smooth paved road. By the time the German tank rumbled forward into full view, slowly aiming its barrel at the gun crew, the anti-tank gun was brought back into position, then laid firmly in place and fired a second shot that knocked out the menacing tank just in time. Only hours later, Frost's entire defense perimeter went on full alert as they observed a large German armored assault force being prepared to cross over the bridge from the south end, just before 9:30 in the morning. Suddenly, a storm of artillery shells hit the surprised Germans. They were caught in the barrage of the British 3rd Light Battery's 75mm howitzers. The strike was signalled by 3rd Battery's commander and acting forward observer, Major Dennis Munford, who keenly watched the south end of the bridge from his observation post across the river. The previous night, after setting up his observation position, he was unable to get a reply from his unit, which was located back in the Osterbeek area. So he got hold of a jeep, and made an astonishing trip, by first getting through the besieging Germans' positions, to get back to his battery, where he replaced his radio. Then, somehow succeeded in bypassing the Germans yet again, made it back into the Arnhem perimeter, where he resumed his forward spotter role. The German attackers were getting blasted, just as they started to cross the bridge. They belonged to the 9th SS Hohenstaufen Division's reconnaissance battalion led by SS Hauptsturmführer Victor Grabner. The assault force numbered almost 30 vehicles, led by its armored cars, and followed up by the armored half-tracks filled with SS Panzer Grenadiers in the middle, and in the rear of the column were half a dozen trucks packed with more infantry. The assault would try to charge over 650 yards to get to the north end of the bridge ramp, and be exposed along the 200 yards of the bridge span. When Major Munford saw his chance, he successfully radioed to his battery. Then Munford's 8 75mm howitzers each fired off 2 high-explosive shells, which exploded precisely on target zone. Only the accompanying German motorcyclists fared the worst as they skidded out of control due to the explosions. The rest of Grabner's vehicles did not seem affected by the strike, except perhaps being pushed to arrogantly attack over the bridge more hastily than before. Having crossed the bridge span, without coming under fire, the Germans reached the north end of the ramp. Here, Grabner's attack was decimated by Frost's waiting defenders, who suddenly poured devastating small arms fire and Piat bombs into the stunned Germans. The attackers were congested on the ramp, after its lead vehicle was immobilized by a British Hawkins mine. Taking the biggest toll on the trapped German vehicles, more than any of the other defenders, were 2 of the British anti-tank guns in the perimeter, which covered the north end and the west side of the ramp. These 2 guns knocked out most of the 10 to 12 German vehicles that were destroyed in total. Probably 70 Germans lay dead in the burning twisted vehicle wreckage now covering the bridge. One of the anti-tank guns, playing a key role in the bridge massacre, was firing from the north end of the bridge ramp. This gun was commanded by Sergeant O'Neill of B Troop, which was located at the corner of the brigade headquarters building. Sergeant Eric Simpson, who was a gunner in C Troop, accompanying the 3rd Battalion on its blocked Tiger route towards the bridge the day before, left his gun and joined 45 men from 3rd Battalion's C Company, which had split off its Tiger route, and then found their way into Frost's bridge perimeter before dawn. When Grabner's attack began, Simpson was in his new gun position, probably joining the stray C Troop gun crew which had tagged along with B Troop. They served the anti-tank gun located at the bridge's north end. He recalls his crew waiting until the Germans were almost on top of us. Before we took out the lead vehicles, the Piats took out the back and the rest were then stuck in the middle, before all hell let loose from all sides, including grenades and Mills bombs soon silenced them all. Sergeant Cyril Robson of C Troop directed this 6-pounder, which was in a street closer to the river, 200 yards to the west side of the bridge. The crew received instructions from Lieutenant Tony Cox, standing in the window of the house above them. Robson first fired solid shot shells at the concrete siding of the bridge until his gun blasted a V-shape out of the parapet, and with that clear opening to the bridge ramp, the IT gun could destroy German vehicles as they were spotted. Private Steve Morgan, of the 2nd Parachute Battalion's medium machine gun platoon at Arnhem Bridge, recalls that from his position in a house next to the bridge, what he saw of the anti-tank guns unleashed firepower against the west side of the bridge. Victor Grabner's reconnaissance unit, from the 9th SS Division, came over the bridge. We heard the rumbling. They came down here. We managed to knock out the first vehicle with a Hawkins landmine on the road here, which meant the others behind were piled up behind. Now I was in a house where the modern buildings are at this time. But we had an anti-tank gun way down there in the front yard of a house, manned by the Royal Artillery. To get at these armored vehicles, what they did was put in solid shot in their 6-pounders, and they blew this wall out from that distance. There was a big gap, right under the top of this underpass. And they were able to fire through that big gap. And that particular gun was accredited with the gun that knocked out most German vehicles on this particular area, and that battle went on for about an hour, and then it died down, and we were absolutely swamped with German mortar fire from all sides. And we all laid down and kept quiet, because we couldn't even get to the windows to fire out. Because it was a really terrific fire. From Monday afternoon onwards, intense barrages of German artillery and mortar fire, along with blasts from their tanks and self-propelled guns, combined with determined German infantry assaults to steadily reduce and silence the British gun crews and their guns. On Tuesday afternoon, several Tiger tanks entered the perimeter from the northeast, and proceeded to fire shells at point-blank range into houses occupied by British troops. Several anti-tank crews attempted to engage this threat, and Simpson's team managed to fire at least one shell, to little effect, before being forced to take cover. An ambush was set to destroy the tank, but it refused to come any further into British territory, and eventually departed of its own accord. Captain Llewellyn-Jones, of the 1st Anti-Tank Battery, remembered the finale fight that erupted at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, September 19th, as he and a crew consisting of Major Arnold, himself, Lieutenant McFarlane, and Sergeant Woods, fired the final rounds from their last serviceable gun. The captain recalls. On Tuesday evening, came the first big tank. A King Tiger advanced up the ramp from the north, and stopped short of the school building on the west side, occupied as brigade headquarters, and, in the basement, a hospital. The 1st battery had one gun left. The 6-pounder gun, from the corner near to what had been battery headquarters, now like almost everything else, just trouble. It was hand-pulled by battery personnel that included the battery commander, battery captain, 1 troop commander, 1 sergeant, and 2 gunners. It was moved in great haste, and to some surprise, arrived safely into a gun position, directly in front of brigade headquarters. Dug in quickly. There were very few rounds left. Distance to the tank was not far, but the angle upwards was quite steep. The tank saw the gun, and attempted to depress its gun. The round went through the building some 20 feet above. 2 anti-tank rounds were then fired, and amid a shower of sparks, the second one was a hit. But King Tiger tanks were very heavily armored. It went up the ramp a few yards, then trundled back down the ramp, out of sight. It was apparently not affected by the strike. Between Monday and Tuesday, the British 1st and 3rd Parachute Battalions made heroic efforts to try break through the Germans to join Frost's shrinking defensive perimeter, but eventually, these 2 battalions were too weak to press on any further. By Wednesday, the end had come for Frost's defiant last stand in Arnhem, and his battle-weary force surrendered. His survivors earning the respect of the Germans. Only 3 6 anti-tank guns and 1 17-pounder gun, out of the entire 1st Airborne Division's anti-tank guns, were still in action when the decimated division withdrawal across the Rhine was ordered, effectively ending the Market Garden campaign. The 1st Air Landing Anti-Tank Battery went into action with 191 men, of whom 24 were killed, 52 evacuated, and 115 were captured. For the 2nd Oban Anti-Tank Battery, of its 168 men were taken into battle, 25 were killed, 27 were evacuated, and 106 were missing. The 1st Air Landing Light Regiment of Howitzers lost 92 killed. It suffered a total of 596 casualties. Thompson, Munford, and 464 other gunners were prisoners of war.